assuming we are live. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the first online webinar for ANZTB SIGiST. I'll start with quickly introducing myself. I'm Ronak Panchal. I'm the head of QA practice at Air New Zealand currently. And outside office, I'm the board member of ANZTB with an aim to contribute and add value to the Australian New Zealand testing community. So with COVID, it was challenging for everybody. We also had challenges of organizing SIGiST events in person. So apologies if you didn't hear from us lately. But the good thing is we now have these live webinars wherein, we are not restricted to a city as such. So we QAs across Australia and New Zealand can collaborate and learn together. Also, we have got access to international presenters like today. So we've got two presenters today presenting live from the US. So this online webinar is more of a trial. So we'll see how we go, and if it's a success, then we'll hear more from us online. So what's in for you guys today? So I'll start with giving a brief intro about what ANZTB is for those who are new, who haven't been to any of our SIGiST events. Then we have got the presentation by Purna and Adrian. We would like to have this more of an interactive session. So if you guys are on YouTube, just try commenting on it and it will prompt you to create an ID. So that ways you are able to either ask questions or post comments. And please, so what we'll be doing is we won't be keeping the question answers at the end. So we'll take a pause and look at the questions and then try answer as we go. And then we'll close it towards the end. ANZTB, as most of you would know, it's a not-for-profit organization and we are a member of ISTQB. The whole purpose of this organization is to support, improve, and advance the software testing profession within Australia and New Zealand. What we do, we facilitate certifications, software testing certifications, which involves also creating and running exams. Last year, we collaborated with ISKI. I'm really excited about that. And they are our official exam providers for ISTQB exams. We support and develop ISTQB syllabi along with the other boards across the globe. We accredit training providers. We have got some ISTQB partnership programs, and we assist the international working group. Like I said, we work very closely with the other boards across the globe. SIGiST, yep. Pre-COVID, we had SIGiST events more in person on venues, wherein the local presenters had an opportunity to address and share their thoughts with the local communities. So we had SIGiST events in Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney, Brisbane, Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch. So the whole idea is to just discuss white papers, new trends in testing, and share information, just more of a value-driven platform wherein QAs could collaborate. So we aimed at about 10 to 15 SIGiST a year, but now that we are online and we have access to global presenters, you would hear more from us. So all of these presentations that we have in SIGiST events are on our website. And now moving forward, these recordings would go on our YouTube channels too. So with these online webinars, I'm pretty excited to reach out to all of you. Yes, we do certifications, and like most of you are already foundation certified. So this is just a snapshot of how you could take a step forward. Won't go too much in details. If you need more details, just visit either anztb.org or iski.org for further details. A word of caution: there are certain platforms and organizations that run certifications which they claim are genuine, but which they may not be. So always ask for either ANZTB or ISKI. Otherwise, it may not be a genuine ISTQB certification. Yeah, moving on to the presentation. So quick story. So Purna, one of the presenters, and I, about 13 years ago, we used to work for Lloyd's in London. And lately, we just got in touch again, and he introduced me to a very beautiful concept, which I genuinely thought would benefit the Australian New Zealand community. So here they are. I'll just do a quick introduction for them. So Purna, he's very humble. He still considers himself as a student of quality engineering and has been here for over a decade. Just yeah, and so his work with clients across the world from Japan, Brazil, France, UK, and US, where he's currently based. He's currently at Conforge and is responsible for the BS quality engineering and research and development of new solutions. We also have Adrian. Hey, Adrian. He's originally from Ireland and currently lives in Las Vegas in the US. He's been in the quality arena for the last 24 years. He started his career with a pure play quality consulting firm called Entrin Technology, doing automation and performance testing for clients around the US. He also runs quality teams. He also ran quality team for United Airlines and Comcast, as well as heading the testing practices in the UK and Ireland for Cognizant. Currently, he is the global quality practice head for Confort. So, welcome, guys. We look forward to your presentation. So, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mark, for the great introduction. And firstly, I hope everybody is safe and healthy as we continue to go through this pandemic. I know everybody out in Australia and New Zealand, you guys have done a tremendous job at ensuring that everybody's safe and sound. But again, what an opportunity! Coming from Las Vegas and Purnananda coming in from Chicago to present to you guys all the way on the other side of the world. You don't get to do that very often. So what we're going to do today between myself and Purna is talk to you guys about what we believe is the next generation of quality engineering, what we've seen from our research over the last 8 months about where customers or where companies have been, where they're transitioning to, and where a lot of the unicorns, and you hear us talk about unicorns, which are the Amazons, the Netflixes, the Capital One banks, etc. What are they doing from a quality perspective? So I'm going to start off, and this is basically a generic slide, but this is where we see a lot of companies around the world play. And there's 4 buckets here, but I'd actually bucket into 3 buckets. On the far left, you still have companies out there that are very people-centric when it comes to their testing and quality capabilities. And when I mean people is there's no real governance. They do have tools for test management, etc. But testing is more like the last cycle in a washing machine where they're throwing code through and they're trying to get as many defects out. So again, it's the last leg in the race. And sometimes it's through no fault of their own. Sometimes they're dealing with COTS products. Sometimes they're dealing with external entities that are driving code into their organization and they really don't have any control. So I would say 10% of the companies that we see are still in this model, again, through no fault of their own. The next 2 buckets are centralized and decentralized. And I'd say 80% of the companies we deal with or see in the marketplace are in these buckets. Centralized means there's a dedicated testing center of excellence. It's a horizontal activity that works across all the products and projects within an organization. Everything is controlled there. All testing, all quality activities. Versus companies transitioning to decentralized, where they're going agile. They have more of what we call a federated testing center of excellence. So they're parachuting the AESTs into the various agile teams, but they have this federated model where end-to-end testing, security testing, performance testing is all done from this federated team. The tools that are being used by each of the agile teams when it comes to testing are managed, the frameworks, the automated frameworks, the metrics. So they have these buckets that each of the agile teams pull into. But they're still struggling. They're really struggling from an agile perspective to get true ROI. And what we see is a lot of what we call as wagility. They're still wagile in the way they go around their agile projects. For instance, we've seen this so many times in that a company says we're agile and we're parachuting AESTs into a project. But there's no communication and collaboration happening between the 3 amigos. So the AEST is doing automation in a siloed participation instead of sitting with the BA and sitting with the developer at the beginning of the project, working with the BA to write user stories or write requirements that enable automation, working with the developer to use a common framework or a common tool set that enables automation throughout the life cycle. And what happens is when you parachute these guys in and you don't have that collaboration up front, it ends up being building up a technical debt where the SDET cannot keep up with the level of changes that are coming in from either user story changes or the code changes coming in, and automation, you're not getting the value because this technical debt just spills from sprint to sprint to sprint. Now, on the far right is what we call experience-centric or Quality.Next. And we would say 10% of the companies out there that are really leveraging everything about the original Agile Manifesto and doing it really right. So they're doing the communication and collaboration across these organizational boundaries. They're not just using Agile techniques, they're also using old tried and tested techniques from 10, 15 years ago. They're bringing in Lean and Six Sigma. Perna will talk a little about value stream mapping. They're doing true root cause analysis. So they're constantly learning. They're constantly innovating. They're constantly looking at the data from their projects and seeing how they can learn from it. And what we find is that a lot of these guys that are in the kind of center buckets, they're the cost-centric buckets, aren't doing retrospectives. When the developers say, I'm an agile team, I'm completely autonomous, that's not right, right? When you look at the experience-centric guys all the way on the right, yeah, they have autonomy, but autonomy is gained over time. Trust is gained over time. The guys in the middle struggle with that. They think they have autonomy from day one, that they can use any tool, any metric, any structure. They don't have to log defects. When the guys on the right, the developers are logging defects, they may not be doing complete pages of defects, but they're logging defects to go back and do pattern analysis so they can learn from their mistakes to ensure that those defects aren't happening again. So what we're going to do is kind of take you guys through what Quality.Next is all about. What are these unicorns doing that enables them to deliver better and faster and to innovate and to learn constantly? I'm going to turn over to Purna, who's going to take you through a lot of the tenets of Quality.Next, and then he's going to pass it back to me later on. Purna,
Right.
over to you.
Thank you, Adrian. Hey, everybody. I mean, so excited to be speaking to all of you today. I think to begin with, everyone who's linked with quality, and you're in this session, you should give yourself a round of applause. Because all of you are heroes. Why? This slide explains it. This statistic is from 2020. From anywhere from $61 billion to $2.08 trillion was the impact of cost of poor software quality and failure. Now, this is not just me saying it. There are research reports out there which corroborate these numbers. I can share them with you. They're on the bottom of the screen. This is even higher than the GDP of Australia or New Zealand, right? So all of us here are on a mission. And what is our mission? Our mission is to recover this, sunk cost or wasted money. And how do we make quality better so that firms, organizations, economies do not have to have this amount of value, right? Just getting wasted in technical debt, in defects, and so on and so forth, right? So clearly something we've been here. I've been in the quality space for more than 10 years. You heard Adrian has been here for more than 24 years, but yet here in 2020, we're still seeing these kind of volumes or this kind of magnitude of impact due to poor software quality. So clearly something has changed, right? And we need to change with it to be able to prevent a lot of this, right? So let's look at what are the new questions that we need to ask ourselves. Now, the first one is, we are getting better and better and better in terms of our software testing techniques, right? We've got more tools in terms of running test automation execution. We've got better ways to do impact analysis and so on and so forth. But I think one fundamental question that all of us need to step back and ask ourselves is that we are finding the defects, right? All of us who are working in an enterprise scenario, and I've worked with multiple clients, like Ronak said, across multiple geographies, and everywhere we've got more than, I would say, 95% defect detection ratio, meaning that less than 5% of defects escape the system integration testing space and actually go into production. Less than 5. I would say most places less than 2%. So we are finding loads and loads of defects. The important question is, are we fixing it? Are we fixing it? Are we helping our engineering communities, our developers, our business analysts, our stakeholders within the wider SDLC understand what are the gaps that may exist in their processes which are leading to defect injection? And later on, we'll share a case study with you about this and how helping our developers and BAs and our architects understand where there may be gaps, patterns of risk and vulnerability, can actually help improve quality, right? Help remove defects rather than just finding and reporting defects, right? So that is the first key question that we need to ask ourselves. Now, the second thing we have to be mindful of, anywhere that you see more and more organizations are becoming agile and DevOps centric, right? They're implementing agile. If you are there in an organization, you already have agile, or you may be scaling agile, and you must be on a DevOps journey, most likely. And what that is doing, if you read about the Agile Manifesto and DevOps, Agile was between how do you sort of the engineering lifecycle can collaborate better. DevOps is between development and operations. How do you collaborate better? So what that is doing is that, sorry, go ahead, Ronak. Was there a comment? No. All right. Okay. So what that is doing is that the role boundaries between different team members within a project team are getting blurred. Right? Like I said, developers need to understand operations teams better. Operations team need to understand developers better. There are new roles like site reliability engineers, like STED. STED is a software development engineer in test. This was a term, mostly attributed that Microsoft coined it. And it talks about how a sort of quality engineer needs to have a developer attribute and performs a pseudo role of a developer as well, right? So with all of this, how is our role changing? What new skills have we adopted to work in a highly collaborative environment that is out there, right? So that's the second question that we need to ask ourselves. Hey, Ronak, I'm obviously not able to see the comments, so if you feel you want to stop me at any point in time for me to answer anything, just let me know, all right? Okay, so
Sure.
let's move forward, right? So the third question. Now, this is a great quote by a person I deeply admire, Mahatma Gandhi. Famously, obviously from India, and you must be wondering how this relates to quality. Let me tell you. So it says, speed is irrelevant if you're going in the wrong direction, right? So see, since I started out, clearly there have been an explosion of test automation tools, right? But more and more of these tools were focusing on test automation of the execution phase, right? So you are becoming more efficient, right? So your speed is increasing. But how do you know you're automating the right scenarios? How do you know you're heading in the right direction, which is what it says? So you actually need to have more intelligence in your automation, right? So there's a report that comes out every year, a very famous world quality report. In fact, if you see the last report, there are 86% of respondents answered to a question, as part of the World Quality Report survey, and said that AI is now a key criteria for them when it comes to selecting a new tool or a new product or a new solution. 86% of them, right? So it's becoming more important to understand that when we bring in speed, but speed in which direction? That is really important, right? And all of us should be mindful of that as we look at expanding our automation footprints wherever we're working. Now, this thing is, and I'm very passionate about this, right? That quality is a team sport. More often than not, the mandate of quality or the responsibility of quality has often lied with one function and one function alone, right? That is with the quality engineering, the testing, the quality assurance function, and we don't have to carry this alone, right? And we cannot. If we are to improve quality across the engineering process, it has to be a joint initiative. It has to be everybody's mandate to improve quality, right? And this then links back to the point that how do we help the other functions within the software development lifecycle become better, right? So it is a team sport. You don't have to do it alone, right? So with that as a backdrop, right, we spoke about four things. We spoke about how we spoke about how you have to increase your skill set within Agile and DevOps. We spoke about how do you introduce intelligence. We spoke about the fact that quality is a team sport. Let's look at what is the solution. If these are the questions, what is the solution? So what we did was we looked at, like Adrian said, the best practices that the different firms have, and we synthesized it. And through our own experience, here's what we thought we need to be doing differently to address the new normal that we're seeing, right? Product quality and risk. That is our solution. So on the left-hand side on the slide, you would see that there is a team that is represented, and we are calling it the quality pod. Now, if you look closely, this team represents, this team is a microcosm of the software development lifecycle. The PAQA in the team is actually a representation of a product owner or a business analyst, but with a quality hat on. Right, a transformation architect is actually a mirror of the enterprise architect, but again with a quality hat on. So the BAQA is here to figure out the business processes or functional requirements. Once they are introduced, are they traceable? Are they testable? Are they breaking any existing business requirement? Transformation architect within the pod is responsible for ensuring that any solution we bring in from a quality standpoint is able to integrate with the overall architecture, right? Or do the architectural or technical data analysis of the solutions being proposed. A full stack QE is a person who can automate front to back, not a particular component in isolation, but from UI to middleware to sort of different channels, mobile, as well as to the backend data and mainframe and so on. So we can look at front to back automation. And SDET is a developer SME who can help developers understand or implement best practices, test-driven development, and so on, right? And data and environment kind of represent the data, can help understand the data lineage within an organization and how to sort of get the right data from production into your test regions. An environment person does the same for environment configurations. Now, these roles together, automation is more DevOps pipeline oriented, right? Somebody who can work with that. So these people together, like I said, represent SDLC in a microcosm. So this is a quality pod, and to my point that quality is not is a team sport. This is the team, right? Our view is that when you have like a team of experts of quality, a quality pod, they can actually work with a set of agile teams or with a set of development teams, right? 8, 10, or a particular line of business, and help them firstly understand their development landscape, right? Understand the application landscape, right? So they are able to help the teams get more visibility in terms of the landscape that they're working in. We've seen too often teams do not really understand where their dependencies are. They don't know what are the interfaces they are dealing with. They don't know if they implement a change, how would it impact the other components, right? So this team helps build that visibility out from each activity or a change right to a customer interaction, right? What's the visibility and traceability? Then depending on that, once you know that if I touch something, here's what I impact, you can create a more targeted coverage which addresses the impact that you're creating across the ecosystem, right? Where is the risk? What am I touching? What am I changing? And then you can be laser sharp in terms of covering that within your testing. And then they design an automated test solution which can be integrated within the entire SDLC. Like I said, you cannot just do it in one testing window. You got to do it across the SDLC, right? So they create that integrated solution, test automated solution with automated quality gates at the end of each phase, right? At the end of requirements, design, development, and so on. And then how do you take data from testing and use this dynamic data to create more intelligence and information so that management teams can look at it and understand live what is my quality risk as I'm moving through the SDLC. Right, I'll take a pause at this stage, Ronak, if there are any comments we want to address. Otherwise, I can move forward.
No comments, Jashan, but a question from me. So this
Sure.
quality pod, these roles are existing in an organization. So do you recommend to keep some time aside of these roles to support quality, or you want these roles to be 100% dedicated towards quality assurance?
Yeah. So our recommendation is to make this dedicated, right? I mean, you do not have part-time superheroes. I mean, you could be doing something part-time, but if there is a call to action, you've got to sort of you got to become a superwoman or a superman, right? So we're saying that these are full-time roles because otherwise what happens is it dilutes the focus. Quality is not a static thing, right? You will have a continuous change program, so you would need a continuous assessment and evaluation of where the risk patterns have changed. So these are full-time roles. They may help out, if the reverse is true, they may help out in other places if there is bandwidth, but we would recommend to have them as full-time dedicated roles.
I think
There's
Leanne
another
had a
question here.
question. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah. Is this a quality center of excellence or embedded in team?
Right. So this is okay. So these are embedded within, like I said, a set of 8 or 10 teams, right? So this is not This is not a team. So this is not like, I would say, one test engineer within an agile team, which typically you would have, right? So that you can think of it almost as a hybrid, right? So they are not a horizontal for the entire enterprise. Like you may have a QA COE, which is at the entire organization level, but this is one level lower, where they are overlapping a set of working with a set of 8 to 10 agile teams, or line of business development teams, day in day out through the iteration cycles, right? So they are at that sort of mid level, but they are horizontal across, like I said, 8 to 10 teams, ideally, right, depending on the volume of change that is being delivered.
And I would say, Purna, I would just add on that they're working with different things throughout the life cycle,
yeah,
based on the maturity of that team. So there may be a focus on code churn, there may be a focus on escape defects, there may be a focus on how to implement test automation properly. So again, the focus areas of working with these 10 to 12 agile teams changes over time.
Yeah, depending on where the risk patterns lie, right? And let me sort of move on. So what is the traditional method, right? The traditional method, like I said, you've got a quality engineer who are within a team or part of a COE focusing only on the test phase. But once you have the quality part, like I said, because of the fact that they map out each function, each phase of the SDLC, they focus on analyzing the deliverables and the patterns and the processes under each phase, right? So they would look at the requirement definition process and say that, okay, the way requirements are being defined, let's say in Jira, are they ambiguous, right? Would my developer understand these requirements? Would my quality engineer be able to figure out, okay, how to trace this out, break this up, and sort of attach step definitions or automation code onto them, right? So they would do that. They would evaluate a design and look at it in terms of, okay, is this design scalable? Does this have a performance implication, right? Does this design break anything existing? Obviously, introduce test-driven development methodologies when it comes to development itself. Look at more component integration testing. How can you have a quality first or a test first approach in terms of the way development is done? And similarly, when you're integrating the code, how do you ensure better end-to-end and take a more business process-oriented view in terms of how your test scenarios or testing is executed? And once you're into production, how can you get intelligence from production, right? So for example, how is my software behaving? What is my performance metric like? What is my business metric, right? If I've implemented a change, obviously I'm looking for some sort of a customer impact. Has that happened? And take that feedback right into your test strategy, right? So the focus really is on each of these functions, analyzing the processes. Like Adrian was saying, the pod would look at production defects, for example. And I'll give you a great example. One of the firms that I was working with, right? So everything is okay in their testing, right? There were no major red flags. And we took sort of their last 4 or 5 months of data in production incidents and analyzed them. So what we found was about 40% of incidents they were having in production, the resolution for which was, there was some sort of a performance issue, and all they did was they bounced the server and it started working. And that was the resolution. And for us, immediately that was a big red flag, right? Because, bouncing a server, you are not really sure what was broken. You are not sure what did you fix. And sure, it's working now, but what if it doesn't tomorrow? Then what do you do? Right? So which meant that as a quality team, we had to work with the operations team to go much, much deeper into understanding, okay, at a thread level, where the challenge was, which particular, maybe legs in production were down, what was the issue, to try and come up with a solution and fix it and replicate that in test regions and fix it, right? So we got that purely by looking at production incident analysis, right? Like I said, you could analyze the way requirements are written, or the way design is, or the way the tooling is done, to find such gaps and fix those gaps, help fix those gaps. So for example, if your business is not writing requirements properly, you can teach your business how to write requirements in a given when-then format, so that it is easily understood by both the developers and the testers and everybody else. And you could straight away write automation code which can map on to your Cucumber requirements, thereby creating sort of an automated traceability loop from requirements to the automated test code and so on. All right, so let me move to the next. Sorry, is there a question, Ronak?
You're good.
No. All right. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. How would these pods operate? Like I said, they would work with a set of aligned teams. This could be 8 or 10 or 12, but common line of business. They would have some commonality among them. and they would work through a network effect, right? So this is not a coaching exercise out and out, right? So these teams would work hand in glove through the releases, right, with teams. And this is called a dojo model, where you actually, learn while you execute, while you implement, right? It's a Japanese term. And once you've taught a set of teams, they then become trainers and then teach a set of another 7 or 8 teams in terms of helping them understand their visibility, traceability, implement some of the best practices. And that way you can scale across the multiple teams that are there in the organization. Now, when you're doing this, it is important to realize, even with cloud migrations, like you would not immediately, you would have to create a business case for it, right? There isn't an immediate reduction in cost. So this is not a silver bullet, right, where you bring in a QE pod and immediately you would see the overall costs going down. Because what will happen is, initially the pod comes in, they will take some time to build this infrastructure, like I said, of visibility, traceability, bring that intelligence in and implement that. So you may see an increase in effort, but then with the fact that you're making the vulnerabilities go away over a period of time, we've seen that your overall total cost of quality or total effort of quality will go down, right? So it is mindful to be aware of that. Let's move forward. So I spoke to you about visibility and traceability, right? So let's look at it, what we mean. So on the left hand side, you would see a value stream map, which actually Boeing put up, and they've got a presentation and how they went about it. If you're interested, later on, we've shared our email IDs. You can ping. I can tell you more about it. I've done something similar in an organization I worked with as well. So what it really did was, it took a change, mapped out all of the activities that take a change to a customer interaction, which is why you see there's a long horizontal line. And there are different color sticky notes, right? So they will tell, one of the sticky notes would say, we had, which one is a label for a manual activity or an automated activity. Who are the people who are controlling that activity or component? What is, so if you see, there will be on the second block, there are 3 or 4 layers. So those layers could be dependencies. What are the downstream dependencies? Now, just mapping this onto the wall, like I said, makes it visible for them, so you understand your stakeholders who are involved better. You understand your dependencies much better, right? And that creates the visibility. What is then your test coverage? What is it covering? And I've put up an analysis of a tool called Prod Perfect. There are other tools which do this as well. What it does is, it takes your tests and it maps out how are your tests then covering the value stream that you see on the left side, right? Which areas are you covering? Which areas are vulnerable, right? So that you use the intelligence to be able to figure out, okay, I am impacting my 5 components. Is my testing coverage, addressing all of the 5, or am I missing something out? And I looked at my defect data, right? And it said that, okay, I'm getting a lot of defects around, let's say, this particular component. Am I over testing it? Almost. I was getting a lot of performance issues. Am I testing that early enough, right? So this analysis would tell you which components you're covering versus which you're not, right? So that's visibility and traceability, and how do you build that in? There are automated value stream mapping tools as well. Like I said, this is a basic example, and there are different tool choices to getting a traceability analysis done as well. Let's move to coverage. So like I said, the first step is to understand the impact. Once you know the impact, you've got to design the coverage. Now, for a very, very long time, all right, and I think in most places still, more than 70%, I would say, the test coverage was focused around the left 4 towers that you would see on your screen, right? That is functionality, performance, compatibility, and usability, right? But there are aspects on the right-hand side, for example, maintainability, reliability, portability, which are very, very important. Because now every business is a technology business, right? Firms are online all the time. So factors of performance, factors of availability, factors of recovery, should you have an incident, become much more important, okay? See, we thought, we studied NASA's testing practices, and they've got a whole portal out there which speaks about how does NASA approach testing, right? Because for them, they have to recover in space. They cannot have an outage in space, right? They absolutely cannot. So for them, they map out each activity. They have recovery protocols, and it's to a T. The recovery has to happen in a matter of seconds. And I'll give you another example here, why this is important. So we were working with a firm, they had an on-premise product. It was a software product, which is getting implemented, working well. With cloud coming in, they said, okay, hey, we'll create a SaaS version of this product. So they did. But what they realized is, after they went sort of SaaS, and they had chosen AWS, I think, they started making a loss on every sale that they were doing, right? So then they analyzed it, and they figured out the way their code was written, even though it was functionally correct, it was consuming a lot of compute resources on cloud, which increased the cost, right, of servicing when they were on cloud. And that is a portability and a maintainability factor. If your developers are writing code in a way where there are no adequate comments, or the modules are not sort of well defined and well broken up, then they may write something and go away, and somebody else comes in. It would be a nightmare. Anybody who's had to sort of maintain an automation framework written by somebody else who's done a poor job will know this pain. You would not be able to understand where the keywords are, how is this organized, how are the methods. I know of firms who don't know their own business rules. Okay, and these are sort of firms with millions of dollars in revenue. So they have to literally study their code to figure out what are the business rules that were written years and years ago. Right, so you have to look at maintainability and portability as a test early on. What is the reliability, and test that out within your testing teams. And that is where we're saying that the coverage has to be expanded. The three orange towers on the right hand side are equally important. Now, more and more applications are implementing machine learning and AI, right? So they are becoming learning applications, thinking applications, right? There's a change. Applications are not static anymore. And most of our testing, you would see on the bottom is something that Carnegie Mellon calls as deterministic testing, meaning we are given an output, a fixed output. Here's the output. We run a test and we compare the test results against that output, right? So the output is predetermined. Whereas in a learning application, the output is not predetermined, right? You want to understand empathy, you want to understand change of tone, you want to understand, if somebody is typing it, let's say you are on Amazon and this has happened to me, or for example, any other agency you're trying to reach, if it's an urgent request, and if the chatbot still asks you those standard routine 20 questions before you're able to get anything done, that would just, irritate and frustrate you as a customer. So are you able to detect the like I said, are you able to understand the tone and the urgency of the customer and route it to a live agent quicker, right? When you pick up keywords. We worked with Alexa banking applications, right? In this scenario, you've got to figure out, is Alexa listening or retaining private data, which we should not, right? If you have machine learning, let's say on your decisioning applications, right? Decisioning applications could be for financial products, right? Could be for credit cards, could be for loans. Are they demonstrating a bias, right? There's a very famous example out there in terms of Google's AI algorithm and the biases that were inbuilt in that algorithm, right? Versus sort of dark skin and light skin, and there were biases inbuilt. There's a very famous study, you can go and look it up. So that then in this case, then you're testing in a non-deterministic world, you're testing in a thinking and learning algorithm, right? So the output is not fixed. So we need to train our teams to be able to tackle these scenarios in these applications. That is coverage. I've spoken quite a bit. Ronak, I'll take a pause. If any comments have come in, happy to address.
I think you're good, Purnananda.
All right. So let's move forward. Then I spoke to you about integrated, right? So like I said, once you have the pod, really what we're saying is that instead of having a separate testing function within the team tested, we've got to train each of the different functions across the SDLC to test their own deliverables, right? Which is what famously Google actually also says, right? There's a book out there called How Google Tests. If you read that, they say the role of a test engineer is to teach the rest of the SDLC how to do the testing and self-test their deliverables, right? So BA, like I said, should be able to look at the requirement and be able to figure out the resilience, testability, and traceability of the requirements. Sort of an architect or a senior developer, when they have a design spec, they should be able to understand whether this matches the complexity guidelines that have been issued, whether there'll be performance issues or not, or whether the design is scalable. Like I said, a developer should be able to use test-driven development, should be able to do component integration testing in an automated manner, right? Test the APIs in an automated way, and not just at the unit level, right? And the test engineers who are in there should be able to then do beyond. If you have a QE, either ways in the mix, they should be able to do beyond just raise a defect and then sit, right? They should be able to do the root cause analysis. They should be able to code the fixes, and work with your production support team. Actually should be able to feed back data. So if you find a defect, it is important for a quality function to be able to understand, if I found this defect, what does this mean for my customer, right? Would I block a user journey? Would this require me to have an alternate user journey? And actually, I was working for a online bank, a digital bank in the UK, and we were hammered on our end of test reports because we had to, for every outstanding defect, we had to give an alternate user journey, because you have to think from the point of view of a customer, right? It is an open defect is not a defect. It'll have some impact. So you have to mention what the impact likely is, and then what's the alternate to that. We have to take, like I said, post deployment, intelligence, and feed that back into your next strategy cycle. So your quality really has to be then integrated across the SDLC, even beyond the SDLC, as you can see here. And then the next aspect of that is, how do you set up your automation, right? Like I said, a lot of people think about automation, I will do UI automation, or I will do mobile automation, etc. No, we feel that all of the automation should be thought of as one single layer, right? And has to be integrated into one single pipeline, right? UI, API, data, and that gets then embedded within your overall DevOps pipeline, should be able to integrate with your orchestration tool, whether you're using Jenkins, TeamCity, Azure DevOps, whatever you're using, it needs to get integrated within that, right? So really the sort of automation has to be a T-shaped automation across the different phases, DevOps pipeline, and across the different technology components of UI, API, and data, right? So that's how your automation solution should be. And again, I mean, we've got architecture views of how you could implement it. There are multiple ways. And like I said, we're not covering that here today. But again, if you're interested, you could even Google it up. We can even share that with you offline. All right.
There's a question, Purna.
Sure.
If you can see this question, okay. In an agile development method, when is the best time to start automation regression suite? Is it better to start after UAT sign off, or start building right from the beginning of the project?
So actually, all right. So I would say, when you speak about execution of regression, right, has to be at the end of each code merge, right? So in that sense, it is before the UAT sign off. So for that particular release, you need to start at every code merge within Git. You should be running automated regression tests, because you don't know what that merge has impacted, right? Has it broken any dependency or not? So you should actually have a continuous regression cycle. That's one. When you should be thinking about regression. So, even with that release on which you're working, you have to start thinking about regression right from the start, because you have to identify what are my top test scenarios, which I'm going to automate as part of in-sprint automation as part of this release, which are then going to, after the release, go and be added on to my regression set. Okay, so one, after every code merge, run a regression cycle, but within the release also start automating from the start, so that once the release is done, regression test bed is a living test bed, right? So you keep adding a set after every release, right? Take the top scenarios from there, add to the regression test bed, because the next release will use the same, and it will include then the test cases from your release as well.
Yeah, what Dagger also is highlighting, that there's always a risk of changing requirements, which leads to a lot of rework.
That is absolutely correct, which is the reason why. So I think that this is a great question, right? So because now you have identified a pattern which is inducing risk in your engineering cycle, right? If you're seeing that the change requirements are getting changed, then either of two things are happening, right? Either your business do not understand how to articulate the requirements or are not clear on it, or your developers are not able to grasp the requirements, so the business has to explain it multiple times, right? So if you see this pattern happening 2 or 3 times, rather than writing test cases, we believe your role as a quality person is get business and developer in a room and tell them, hey, this is what is happening. Let's figure out. Do the business need help in terms of how requirements should be defined and articulated so that they don't mess things up? Or do we need to educate our developers in the domain or the product so that business don't have to give the same requirement multiple times? So you fix the gap there, rather than trying to run regression each time. You understand? Because the impact of that is, like you said, if the requirements keep changing, your workload will increase, your cycle time will increase, and you would still run a risk. So you've got to wear, like I said, your specialist hat and fix it with the business and the developers.
Cool. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Let me do a quick time check, so we're okay on time. So like I said, the last bit was how do you keep it informed? So this is something that we have developed, Adrian's brainchild. We're calling it the Agile Credit Score as of now. What it does is it is defined as a quantitative measurement system of team health. Okay, So it would look at performance, pace, and predictability, right? For each team, each agile team or development team across a number of factors, including escape defects, including requirement stability, including code churn. And then this would feed this data back to each of the teams saying that, hey, here's how you're doing on your overall maturity. Here's how you're doing on performance, pace, or predictability. And it would tell them specifically what mistakes they are making. So if, for example, they're changing requirements frequently, the requirement stability index would be very low. And it would trigger that automatically. And along with that, it would trigger an automated recommendation of what each of these teams then need to do to be able to fix that gap, right? And here's who you can contact within the quality pod who can help you in fixing this solution. So this is a dynamic dashboard, works off the data that is within the engineering lifecycle. But there are other tools out there as well. You could use Splunk. Splunk has something similar as well. There are multiple other tools, paid products, which do the same thing. The idea is take live data from the engineering process, give that intelligence back to the team so that they know where they're doing well. Give feedback, right? That's what DevOps is all about. Give feedback to them where they're doing well, where they need more help and attention, and give them the solution so they're able to fix it and then move forward, so that your burden, as a quality owner, reduces when it comes down to the testing phase. I'll hand over to Adrian to give some proof points of the fact that this works and the kind of impact it has on organizations. So Adrian, over to you. Speak
Great.
about the case study.
Thanks, Purnananda. Actually, I love that changing requirement question that came up earlier and automation. And there's another one just came up, how to handle requirements change when testing is already halfway through. So we see this a lot, right? We see this constantly, that when teams think that agile means I can change all the way to the hour before code is going to be released, right? Yep. And it's wrong, right? So agile does mean you can change requirements as you move through the sprint. But there is a point where you're putting, as Purna said, too much technical debt on both developers and the testers to be able to keep up with those changes. And this gets to this slide here. A lot of organizations talk about wanting to shift left, right? It's been a term that's been around for the last 10, 15 years. And what does it mean, right? I want to be able to take data from the right and fix it on the left. But how do I do that? And that's where organizations really struggle. They really struggle with doing retrospectives properly, to be able to look at the right data, to be able to analyze it and have conversations to the left, right? And what we do is we've been working with a lot of organizations to capture the right set of metrics based on their maturity to help them shift left, right? So where was I yesterday? Where am I today? How do I use the data from yesterday and today to learn and innovate for the future? And this was a simple case study around doing true root cause analysis, right? And there's two halves to this slide. We'll concentrate on the top half first. This is a project that was ongoing for eight months. What we did was we went back and did true RCA on the critical and high defects that were found for this project. And if you look at that pre-UAT phase, that kind of purple phase there, and look at the defects that are related to requirements. Again, we're looking at where defects were found versus where they were actually injected into the cycle. So 26% of the defects that were actually found in this UAT phase, after doing true root cause analysis, were related to requirements. So you have requirements defects that have leaked 6 phases. How in the name of God do your critical and high defects, leaking all that way, right? So there was no communication and collaboration happening between the three amigos, between the developers, and actually I would put the fourth in there, with the customer in there, between the developer, the BA, and the tester, and the customer, to ensure that each organization understood what was being asked for them. Now, we gathered this data, and that was great, right? So then we said, okay, let's put this in dollars and cents. So if you go down to the bottom right-hand corner there, it's a little, I'm getting old, so it's a little small on my little laptop here, so I'm going to look at it. But for this project, the cost of finding and fixing the defects, all the defects, was $8.5 million. Well, we basically said, if we can just identify 20% of those defects in the phase they were injected, we could have avoided $1.2 million in cost overruns. And when you put that in dollars and cents, people really start to take notice. So for instance, what we did in this case for requirements, just the requirements, is we implemented something simple that's as old as I am, and it's static requirement testing or static user story testing, where you bring the three amigos together and you go through the use cases, you go through the requirements, and you start logging changes to those, not defects, but changes against the user stories, against the requirements. And when we did this simple thing, and then it went, and another project, the project we implemented on, after we did the retrospective, we found that there were 796 changes made to those user stories based on that simple practice of doing requirement static testing. That would, if we didn't do that, that could have resulted in 796 defects leaking throughout many, many different phases. So again, in order to shift left, it's really important that organizations start to look at doing retrospectives and doing them right, looking at the right set of metrics to be able to, again, I'm going to say it once again, to be able to, where was I yesterday, where am I today, but more importantly, how do I use that data to be able to have a conversation with all the teams that are involved right at the beginning of a life cycle, to ensure that defects aren't spilling from phase to phase to phase. Now, this is a agile project, right? But again, it's very important. When you put things in dollars and cents, people stand up and you start taking notice, and that's where the retrospectives happen, the pattern analysis, the value stream mapping. These are very, very important things that are old school, but they're very important pieces of being truly agile. Let's move to the next. So this is a kind of state of quality report, and there's two data points here that we're just going to call out. One is the first, the test consulting and coaching. You can see that 46 to 48% of the participants are actually doing what we've been talking about here. They're doing true root cause analysis. They're working with everybody that's involved in the SDLC to do things right the first time, right? To ensure that everybody understands that it's their job to build a quality product. It's not the testing organization's job to catch things. And we use a phrase, building quality in versus testing quality out. So you can see 46 to 48% of the organizations are actually doing this. They're teaching their organizations around quality. Down and below the next one, it's actually gone down, but customer support and customer training. What we found with the unicorns is they don't think of their job ending at the SDLC when they deploy a project. They actually talk about it going beyond the SDLC, right? So we talk about it as being the circular flow of value information. How do I stay in contact with everything that I'm releasing, all the way out to the employees that may be serving the customer, all the way out to the customer, and bringing all that data back into the business again so I can learn again. So it's a true circular flow, right? Everything does not stop at the SDLC, it goes beyond. And it was kind of disappointing to see it went down in 2020. But again, this is what the unicorns are doing to ensure that there's this circular flow of information happening related to everything they're doing. Yeah. So was there a question there, Ronak?
Not really, just good comments around use product refinement meetings, definition of ready, review checklists such as invest. And
gotcha.
People agree
well,
doing it.
It's great to see that there's a couple of thumbs up out there that the quality practitioners are really having a voice. So I'm going to turn it back over to Purnananda.
Thank you. So Adrian, so like we were saying, you wanted to show you validation, right? So the intent was to show you the change is already happening. See, this slide is a survey on, as a quality engineer, which tasks have you been asked to participate in? And you can already see more than 25% are working with customers and are coaching. And the unicorns are, like Adrian was saying, implementing some of this. As you can see, these are firms which are outperforming the rest of the Fortune 500 by multiples of magnitude. They are not just 106 times faster, but their change failure rate is 7 times lower, and they recover from an incident a whopping 2,604 times faster, right? They are able to do that because their code is well maintained. They know how, they have automated recovery scenarios built in, right? So they're using some of the principles that we've spoken to you about, right? In Google, like I said, the responsibility is not to test. They run, a significant software composition analysis which tells after each merge where the vulnerabilities may lie, where the impact may be, and they feed that back to the developer to for the developer to fix it themselves, right? So they're implementing some of the things that we've spoken to you about, and as a result, they're much faster, and they're much more safer compared to the rest of the organizations. So this clearly, these methods have delivered results, right? What does it mean for you then? What does it mean for me as a quality practitioner, for all of us who are on this call? It just means that we need to unleash the specialist in us. We have to move away from doing generic things. We've got to pick a role in that pod, right? Become either a business BAQA, or become an SDET, or become a transformation architect, and start thinking front to back of the whole life cycle, end to end, from technology to our customers, to business processes and customer journeys, and be able to bring that insight back to our SDLC teams and help them fix their gaps and responsibilities, really. So this is about unleashing the superhero in you. That is what it means for you, that your role has become more critical, has become more end-to-end, and you need to start thinking more holistically. That's what it means to you. And we wanted to sort of make that clear, right? Again, I think to wrap off, what I would say is that, we've gained this knowledge by going through a ton of research. There are some great books out there which you could read. Accelerate, project to product. These are books which will give you insight on what's a difference between product engineering versus a normal engineering methodology. Accelerate summarizes some of the Google has an institute called DevOps Research and Analysis. It's called DORA. It has best practices on DevOps. It has that. You could go to the Carnegie Mellon website. Software Engineering Institute does a ton of great research. So we've gone through all of that. Those are some good sources to look at. Of course, Adrian and my email IDs are there. If you've got a great idea, any feedback, any comment, feel free to write to us. We are continuously focused on research and development. We'd be more than happy to bounce off new ideas with the quality community. But I'll just take this moment also to summarize, right? Today, we spoke to you about the fact that, how the role of a quality engineer is changing, right? It is becoming more an engineering, or even I would say outside the SDLC function, right? And we believe that instead of having a person embedded in a team, you need to have a team of experts working to remove the vulnerabilities rather than finding defects. Rather than finding defects, how do you fix defects? That's where the focus needs to be. And the way to do that is to, first of all, create visibility and traceability within your engineering process so that you understand your landscape better, and you understand the impact that you're creating through change better. And then you can find the gaps, you can find the patterns of risk and vulnerability, and coach your developers and BAs and help them implement measures that they can self-test the deliverables, right? As they say, you teach a person to fish, they will not be reliant on you for the rest of their careers, right? And you need to be able to integrate this method across the SDLC. You cannot do it in silo, right? And then you need to have an ability to use these data points from your engineering process in a dynamic way, so that you can adjust your risk strategy, testing strategy, in life. That's what we really spoke to you about. That's some of our research. And here's our hope. I'm a big Matrix fan. So this is a slide from, actually, a screen graph from Matrix. So, if you know the story, Neo, once he's able to see the code, right, the Matrix as a series of numbers and code, he's able to look at the bullets and stop them. So imagine you are Neo and the bullets are the defects. So once you're able to see the patterns of vulnerability and risk, our hope is you would also just be able to raise your hand and stop them. So with that thought, I thank you very much for joining in today. It was great speaking to all of you, great answering some of the questions that we got. I'll stop sharing, Ronak, and I'll hand it over to you.
If I may just to answer Leon's question there, yes, Leon, it is, but it's more than just process focused. It's really focused on the technology aspects of things as well. So yes, it is that QA umbrella across the SDLC. And I'll do something shameless. There's a lot of, we're completely tool agnostic, but there's a lot of tools out there that we're seeing that really help organizations be more predictive in everything they do. So the likes of C-Lights, Curiosity Software, Master. Again, these are great tools that you guys should take a look at to help you be more predictive in everything you're doing. Sorry, Ronan, back to you.
It does, Chris's time. It does need sponsorship. Without sponsorship, because this is like anything else, like Agile, like DevOps, it needs a mindset change, right? So it would need sponsorship to implement this. Yes.
You're on mute, Ronak.
The most famous sentence in 2020.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Can
I'm
you hear
back.
me now?
So cool. So for me, key takeaway is the whole concept of QA pod, and like you rightly mentioned, Purna, this is like a change in mindset, not only for the QA community but people beyond. And yep, so testing is a shared responsibility, like you rightly mentioned. So that's again a bit of education that's required beyond the testing community. And your matrix were brilliant, man. So there's a lot of work behind it. So congrats on getting that together. And again, the cost of fixing the defect, keeping the eye on the dollar value, and monitor having that monetary approach, that kind of would ensure a lot of support. So that's brilliant. But overall, I think I genuinely enjoyed this presentation. I know you guys are very busy, so thank you guys for taking out time and addressing to the Australian New Zealand community. I'm sure you guys would come up with more topics for this community, and we would love to have you guys back. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Cool. So for the QA community, this is a live webinar now, but for those who missed it, if you feel free to share this YouTube link to your friends who may want to benefit from it. Also, the slides would be on our website. Something to note. And then in the future, we would have more of these events. So if you guys would like to present, just get in touch and we'll have that organized. And yep. So that's about it. So this is our first live webinar, and
We should have a
I'm sure
round of
there's some
applause.
feedback. So we are more than happy to have some feedback. So feel free to post your feedback here, and we'll definitely take that on board for our future events. So thank you all. I know it's in the middle of the working time, so it means a lot for you guys taking out time and being in this learning process. So thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
rest of the day, and thank you,
Thanks
Purna,
very
and thank
much.
you, Adrian.
Thank you. Bye.
Talk to you later.